Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. I'm Sheryl Lotzer, happy to be your host today, joined by my colleague, Vern Schellinger. We are delighted to have you here to answer your job search questions. So for those who are new, Kristen, I think you haven't been with us before, right, on this call? So this is an open Q&A for the next hour. So myself and Vern, we are both career coaches. I'm also a recruiter, and Vern has also been an HR executive. So we have some experience in this. Actually, Sonia, who's one of our job seekers here, who's a regular attendee, she's also an HR executive. So she sometimes pops in with her wonderful HR wisdom. So we are happy to answer whatever job search questions you have about any aspect of your search. So who would like to kick us off? Ty.
Well, I guess if nobody wants.
Okay. But Tamara has one.
Okay, go ahead.
Hold on, I was on mute. Yeah, and forgive me if this is revisiting things like 25 times, but I am trying to figure out to kick off an actual formal job search again, and I'm a little overwhelmed. And so I'd love, I know a lot of different things to do, but I'd love to hear kind of tips on what works for people. I get overwhelmed by the amount of. So two questions with that. Number one is, I see a lot of jobs out there where I'm not networked, but they're interesting to me. And my modus operandi is to apply when I'm interested in them. And it doesn't take a lot of work, even if I don't have anybody to network with there. And two is, with all of the job listings that you do look through, et cetera, do people set up a weekly time to look through those? How do you how do you keep track? That's my third question. What are best ways to keep track of all the stuff you've put out there?
There's a lot there. I'll answer a little bit of it, Vern, you can answer a little bit of it. So, we talk about this on this call that this, job search is very much about networking, okay? When you apply to a job on a job board, LinkedIn job board, Indeed, Career Builder, those kinds of things, you are competing with, I can't even tell you how many people. In fact, the new sort of phenomenon, and Vern and I were talking about this before you guys got on, is right now, because there's so many organizations that are offering fully remote opportunities, that has now opened up the competition to the entire country. I might have mentioned here that I recently did a search, because I'm a recruiter too. I recently did a search, posted a job on LinkedIn's job board, a remote job, I got 173 applicants in 24 hours. Conversely, I posted a job that was local here in the DC area, meaning the person had to work locally, 9 responses in a week. And I'm not alone. I mean, I was just talking to a fellow recruiter yesterday. We were having a catch-up networking call, and she's like, yep, same thing on her desk. This is what's happening now. There's unbelievable competition when the job is fully remote. Now, that also means you have more opportunities, right, to go for a remote job. So that opens the world up for you too. So it's both sides, okay? So employers are competing for your attention as well. That's their side of it. It's very hard for them to land people because you've got a million opportunities too. So it's really equal, it's a level playing field. That said, folks like me and Vern will always recommend that networking is going to be the way to go. And so, yes, you can apply, Tamara. You can apply to whatever job you want, but finding that internal champion. And I realize that you said in your question that you don't always necessarily have one. So it's not that you shouldn't apply, but you got to manage your expectations tremendously. Okay. Never make applying on online job boards more than 10% of your search activity. 10% of your search activity. 90% should be networking. And networking,
I'm not talking just job boards. I mean, there are ones that I'm on, there's a Progressive Communicators of DC email listing, which is a little better because you can kind of, you're in this smaller group, or there's a number of, those kind of smaller groups for my particular industry as well. I tend not to do the blanket job boards.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are fine, and you're right, and they're more niche, and you can network better because these are people who on some level. Okay. The point though is that it really, really is about networking. It's the phrase is you need to show up before your resume. When you show up by reputation, by relationship, by referral, it's much more powerful than showing up as just a blank piece of just a random resume that an employer has where they have no connection to you. You're literally just a document. Whereas if you show up through a relationship, you're a real person and someone's actually saying, hey, you need to check her out. So that's my one tip there. In terms of the tracking piece, I know you had two other questions. One was about tracking. Vern, do you want to have any tips on that?
The only tip I have is everybody needs to have their system, whatever it is. Some people use Excel spreadsheets. Other people use, file folders. I don't know that there's one set, this is the way to keep track of everything in the job search, because it is a lot of information from a lot of different people coming at you all at different times. And it certainly is a challenge. Chair or anybody on the call, if any of you have developed a system you think works really well, please share it with us and Tamara. Kristen?
Yeah, I'm actually going through that process now. So I'm not actively looking for a job, though my contract ends in November. So I'm doing what I need to do to prepare. So like my star smart stories, elevator speeches, etc. But I'm going through the same thing because it's a lot. So I actually you get this from Aldi if you have one local to you, but the planner where it goes by day. I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah.
My filters. Yeah. So they have by day, then by month. And I mean, I'm networking like 2 to 3 people a day. So it was very overwhelming. So I did that, and I actually have a Google Doc where I have different tabs, which is a Excel spreadsheet, but online. So if you want to share it with anyone and get their opinion, you can give them the link instead of sending the document via email, and that's easier to keep up with for me. So I'll put like my star stories, and I have accountability buddies too. So we'll call each other like once or twice a week and say, what did you do this week? Why or why not? Do you want to talk about it? Things like that. So that's really been helpful. I have a notepad where I keep all my conversations written down, and then I'm going to put them into a Excel spreadsheet to keep them organized.
So,
Okay, thanks.
now the other thing, Tamara, in terms of networking, who are the 5 to 10 people who know you really well? You don't have to give us the names or anything, but I'm assuming you have 5 or 10 people, maybe more, who know you really well. Have you talked to them at all about your job search?
Yeah.
Okay, and have they given you any feedback, any suggestions, any advice? Are they able to connect you to someone in their network who might be someone to talk to about a specific job or a specific type of role, even if it's just it may not even be a specific role? I want to get into, I'm focusing on marketing positions at the director level, and talking to people who are directors of marketing to get ideas from them in terms of what's current, preparing yourself to network with other people, and in beginning to prepare yourself for potential interviews as well.
Yeah, I mean, another trick that I do, which is standard, is, if I do see a job opportunity for what I'm looking for in LinkedIn, I when I see one, I always go to see who I'm connected with.
Yeah.
Because that's a good way, and I did this a couple of years ago. So it's trying to I sort of, have a group of people who know. It's just sort of trying how to be fresh about it when you're kind of revisiting it every now and again. So that's what I've got to think about. Because I'm coming, I've got a small project, but it's not enough to sustain me, and I really would like something full-time. And I actually don't want remote, I want hybrid, just because of the way that I work. I want someplace that I can go to. So that, you actually gave me some good news inadvertently on that.
Wow. And don't dismiss. I want to make sure I hear you right. You said some of the people you may not have talked to in a while. Is that accurate?
Well, I haven't kind of I talk to them sort of regularly, but I haven't said, all right, now I'm at a place where I can go back to look at the full-time option because this particular project has ended. So
Yeah.
there are a few people I can go back and do that with.
Yeah, you should definitely have that conversation
Okay.
and again, communicate with them as much as possible.
Mhm.
What do you believe is, the type of role or roles that would really suit your skills, your experience, your background? What's the ideal job for you?
Mhm.
And I just posted in the chat a video, a job seeker video that I did called Accessing the Hidden Job Market. It doubles back on what Vern was talking about in terms of the people you want to connect with. And I have this
Mhm.
model that I call the family tree, or like the family, your family network, twins, siblings,
Okay.
first cousins, and second cousins. It has to do with your level of relationships with those people. And also, so it's basically people who know you, like you, and trust you, and people who get what you do or want to do. So there's family tree members for both. So your
Okay.
twins, for example, are the people who, you're super close to. They'll dance at your wedding. They'll help you move, those people, right? Then your siblings are the people who you're really close to, who know you by first name. First cousins are people who are like a dormant
Interesting.
relationship. And then the other side are people who get what you do. So twins are people who do what you do. They're a really great referral source. Your siblings are people who understand what you do, and so forth and so on. And so if you watch that video, you'll see kind of how to prioritize your networking efforts.
Okay.
Maximize. And so the best relationships, the people who can champion you the best are people who know you the best and people who get what you do the best, because they want to help you and they're capable of helping you. So your
Okay.
next door neighbor, who you might be very friendly with, is lovely, but they may be in a completely different field, have nothing to do with what you do, right? Whereas somebody who really gets you and also likes you, knows you, trusts you, those are the people who can best help you. So it's
Okay.
really prioritizing, maximizing, focusing your networking efforts.
Thank you. It's great.
Sure. All right, other questions?
I have a question. The job seeker knows they're overqualified for the position. They've addressed it in the letters saying, well, I'm overqualified. I have a passion, or this is why I'm interested in your organization. The job seeker receives an interview. What would be the approach, if any, to that? Would that be mentioned again, or just let it go and say, well, they understand this?
So state that again. They think you're overqualified?
No, the job seeker looks at the job description and thinks, oh, I'm overqualified. But I'm going to apply because I like this organization. I like what they do. States it in there in the cover letter. While I'm overqualified, I like your organization. I want to work for your organization. But that they get a call and say, okay, we want to talk to you. So what would be the approach in terms of the interview?
What do you think the approach should be, Ty?
I would just go out there and throw out my qualifications. I would assume that they read the letter, but I would assume that they know that, and the fact that the person's like an older worker, probably this person, they can see that they're overqualified.
Right. So you're right. Most employers will notice that. I would actually address it, because the fact is that you don't want to leave any objections on the table. If you already think that there's an objection, whether you're overqualified, underqualified, whatever, it's something that to be addressed, because they could be thinking it and not saying it.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely address it. But first you have to get to understand the job better, which means you have to ask some really good questions. So don't assume anything about the job description. People write all kinds of things in job descriptions that may or may not be the full scope of the role. So your job, let them ask you whatever questions.
Okay.
You ask them some really strategic questions about the role, about the scope, about responsibilities, about their goals, about, whatever. As you do that, you're going to really see, am I actually overqualified? Maybe this is a bigger role than I thought it was.
Okay.
Okay. So don't assume, just check it out first. Now, the other question is, are you really overqualified? Meaning, is it the kind of overqualification that's going to make you bored in the job? And why are you actually applying that? Because there are some people who are at different, whatever, stages of life, stages of career, stages of whatever. They're like, nah, you know what? I'm cool with a job that's a lighter lift. And that's fine. You might be overqualified, and that's fine for you. And you want that. On the other hand, if you are not looking for a lighter lift, you're still looking for the challenge. Why are you applying? Ask yourself that. You don't want to interview for the practice. Please, folks, please, on behalf of all recruiters in America, okay? Do not just apply and interview for the practice. When you do that, it wastes everybody's time, right? Because you're not planning on taking the job, and then the employer gets all excited about you, and you're going to pull out, right? Just like you wouldn't want them interviewing you for the practice. You only want them interviewing you because you're actually qualified for the role. So make sure you're at least 80% interested in the opportunity. And the only 20% remaining is like the culture fit, things you just wouldn't know until you meet with them. But only apply to jobs you're interested in. You feel like you're appropriately qualified for, whatever that means for you in your life, and that you are ready to move forward if everything else checks out.
Okay.
Vern, any
So-
thoughts? I'm sorry.
Well, I have, following up, and Shira, come back and see if you agree with what I'm going to say. Do everything that Shira just said. And if you feel the interview has gone really well and they're really interested in you and you've asked good questions and they've answered everything, at the end of the interview, is that the time to address the elephant in the room? In other words, say,
Right.
is there anything else that we need to, talk about? They may say, do you have any additional questions? And you might then address it and say, I applied for this job. Tell them all the reasons why you want this job, but there may be some concern on your part that I'm overqualified. I don't know,
Right,
Shira?
because otherwise, yeah, that's great, Vern, because otherwise they could be thinking it and not say anything. In other words, nobody wants to seem discriminatory,
Yeah.
right? They're not going to want to say, oh, you're overqualified. Oh, you've got too much. They might try to be diplomatic about it. I mean, I've done that myself. If I see somebody who's got extra experience, I'll say, wow, you're really, really, you've got a ton of experience here. You're a seasoned candidate. Is this, so-and-so, is this going to be enough for you? Are you going to feel challenged in this role? Is this something that you really feel is a good fit? That's how I would phrase it, but not everybody would think to do that. And so if they don't, bring it up and say, you might be thinking that I'm overqualified for this. And truly, I do have a lot of experience. However, here's why I'm interested.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because again, and this happens a lot, as Shira said, especially when it comes into, they don't want to give bad news to people. It's uncomfortable. They don't want to hurt people's feelings. So, unless you bring it up, they could be sitting there thinking,
That's
well,
right.
he's overqualified. He's really good. I really like him, but
But
we're not going
is
to
he
hire
going to
him.
be interested? Is he going to be
Yeah.
challenged?
All of those things could be swirling in their head, and they still may not hire you because they think you're overqualified. But at least get it out on the table to so then at least you've got a chance to I mean, hopefully you impress them so much during the interview, they're going to hire you anyways, even if they do think you're overqualified. That'd be the best case scenario.
Thank you.
Yep. Let us know how it goes.
Okay, I certainly will. Thank you.
I have 3 questions. I can just go one by one. So this week, I've been networking like crazy, and I talked to some lady that I met on LinkedIn. I was just searching people that are doing things that I may be interested in. And so I messaged her on LinkedIn and said, I really would like to know about your job, your pros and cons. I want to see where I can move to and transition to when I look for a job. And we scheduled a one-on-one, and it was not what I wanted or expected. She was it seems like she was trying to get me into this MLM pyramid scheme type thing. And her LinkedIn has nothing that says anything about it. It says she works for a main healthcare system. And she was like, are you interested in knowing more? And I said, no, not at all. I want to know more about your job. I don't want to know how to make assets globally. Like, that's not my interest right now. And I have assets. Like, I don't need that. And she completely avoided it and wasted my time. And she sent me all these resources. I'm like, how should I handle that? Because I found that really rude that she wasn't listening to me. So is there like a point where I can say, no, I don't want to continue with this because it's honestly, it wasted my time. I didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's an unusual, or say unusual. That's an unusual situation to happen in networking. Okay. Normally if someone's going to schedule a one-on-one, they're doing it because they want to help. And by the way, just so you know, MLM and pyramid schemes, two different things. MLMs, multi-level marketing, actually is a legit. I'm not saying you should be interested in that, her thing, but MLM is actually a very legitimate business model. It's not a pyramid scheme. There's nothing unethical about it. It's actually a proper company. Pyramid schemes are completely different. That's I can't even describe it as much as just to say that it's not a legitimate business. But MLMs, like an actual product, right, where they're selling, where you've got a downline, that's okay. Like Mary Kay, Amway, those are MLMs. But regardless, that's just a side note. The fact that she kind of roosted you, you know, and brought you into the conversation just to sell you this other thing, that's not ethical. Because she didn't make good use of your time. I would simply say to her, you know, thank you for your time. You know, this is not something that I'm interested in, and I wish you all the best. And that's it. Just very simple. I'd be gracious about it. Just, you know, just cut it off, and that's it, and just move on. Because you're right, that was not appropriate of her to, you know, to use your time that way. She should have at least said to you, you know, right up front that this is this is the reason why she was going to be meeting with you. That's not cool. So just be gracious about it, you know, and
Right.
hopefully other people that you've reached out to who actually accept your invitation to network properly, you know, will do it correctly. I'm really sorry that happened to you, Kristen.
It's okay. I mean, luckily it's only been once. I've talked to a lot of people that I haven't met through networking groups, and that was the only instance. I've actually have given people advice on finding a job because a lot of people I'm talking to want to move out
Yeah.
of what I want to get into. So I find it very interesting how the world works. And then the other one, the second of the third question, or three questions. Eventually down the line, I've been going to career confidence meetings, and they had a webinar on Saturday about finding recruiters. What do they do? Just general information. What do you have any recommendations on finding a good quality recruiter? I've gone through recruiters before, but a lot of them, especially in healthcare, do not seem to want to help you. They're just trying to fill spots. I could be wrong, but this is the impression I'm getting. And since I don't have, quote, the experience, though I am totally capable of doing said job, it's really hard for me to, you know, prove my worth to them, saying I am very capable, if they don't want to get to know me and they're just trying to fill a spot. So I find that super frustrating. I have my education. I work very hard for what I do. And I can learn anything basically if you give me the chance. But every recruiter I talk to either want me to be a certified nursing assistant, which I am way overqualified to do, and I do not want to do it anymore. Or they just, you know, I can't build a relationship with a healthcare recruiter. I've done it for IT recruiters, and they're like, oh, I may know somebody, but I can never get a healthcare recruiter. And I mean, any advice on that, or any like?
Yeah, I actually have a lot to say on this. Vern, do you want to take this first?
Well, the first thing, and I know Sharon and I have talked about this before, understand the difference between what are called contingent recruiters and executive search recruiters, retained recruiters. There's a world of difference between the two. The contingent recruiters are much like you're describing, Christian. They basically get paid if they present a candidate and the company hires that candidate, they get paid. So it's in their best interest to send hundreds of candidates in there, hoping one of them will get hired and then they'll get paid. So
Right.
That's their primary focus and motivation. So it's difficult to find the type of recruiter that you're looking for in the contingent world. That's not to say there are not some really good recruiters in the contingent world that would be more focused on you as an individual and what you want, and only work with you and only put you forward for jobs that you really feel are the right ones. But it's somewhat of a crapshoot. Now, the other way to sometimes find that out is use your network. You know, have you worked with any recruiters that you would highly recommend? And, you know, that's another way to find some people that are more qualified. If it's a retained search firm, it's a completely different animal. They are getting paid by the company. The company is paying them up front to find the best slate of candidates. So it's in their best interest to really focus on the candidate, to really help the candidate, because it's their reputation on the line. When a retained recruiter says, we're going to bring you a slate of 3 to 5 really qualified people, if they put somebody in front of the client who's not qualified or comes off poorly, it reflects on the retained recruiter. So
So
sure.
how can you, sorry, how can you identify a retained recruiter?
Well, first of all, retained recruiters are typically only at executive level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're
I'll
so
make note
below
of
that. Yeah. Most recruiters who do searches underneath executive level are typically going to be
Mhm.
contingent.
Okay.
The way that it is. Most employers won't pay. I mean, they will sometimes. I mean, I myself do, all kinds of searches and I get retained, but that's just the way that's just the way my business model works. And my the employers that I work with are fine with that. Because I've been in
But
business a long
overall,
time. Overall, yeah, typically
right.
it's going to be contingent. But I think it's important for us to explain the business model here. Okay. Recruiters work on behalf of the employer to find them top talent, period. They don't actually work for the candidate. This is just the business model, okay? That said, a good recruiter, when interviewing somebody, should make sure that the opportunity is a good fit for the candidate, care about what the candidate wants, ask questions around, is this the right fit for you? However, the employer on the other side is beating down this recruiter's door and saying, we want the unicorn candidate. We want someone who has this skill, this certification, da, 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 da. And the recruiter can only present candidates that the employer will accept. Even if the candidate says, no, but you don't understand, I can really do that. If they're at the mercy of, literally, Kristen, they're at the mercy of the employer to only present candidates that the employer finds acceptable. Now, a good recruiter will negotiate, right? Say, yeah, employer, we know you want X skill, but could you deal with Y skill? Can there be a learning curve here? That kind of thing. So hopefully that work has been done on the front end between the recruiter and the hiring manager. But when it comes to the actual time to recruit and interview candidates, the recruiter has no choice but to have the employer in the back of their mind saying, we only want people who have X skill, Y skill, Z experience, da, 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 right? And that's where it's not about necessarily when you say you want a quality recruiter, you have to define what you mean by quality. To me, a quality recruiter is somebody who looks at both sides of the aisle and says, okay, employer, what do you want? Okay, candidate, what do you want? What's a good marriage here? Okay. But quality does not necessarily mean a recruiter who's working for you, because they're not working for you. They're actually working for the employer, right?
Right.
Even though you're looking for XYZ, you can have the most wonderful, kindest, patient, wonderful recruiter in the world, but there's only so much they can do for you because the employer is paying the fee, right? So they can only present candidates who are actually qualified in the mind of the employer. But again, they should be also listening to you and making sure that they're not forcing you, okay, or trying to force you into a job you don't want. That is not quality. Somebody who listens and say, Kristen, this is the job. This is what they're looking for. Okay, A, are you qualified? Right, great. If you are you interested? Is this right for you? That to me is a quality recruiter who looks for the marriage. Does that make sense?
No, and I agree with you. I haven't worked with a recruiter or staffing agency or anything like that for 2 years because I've been employed. But I remember the struggles of me talking to a few recruiters and they're like, well, why don't you just go back to being a CNA? I'm like, I don't know. I spent like $80,000 in an MBA. What do you think I want to do? Not trying to be rude, but basically, maybe I should rephrase and say, I want a recruiter to understand my worth. I understand they have constraints where their hands are tied behind their back, where the company wants X, Y, and Z. But I'm in a position where I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z. I just haven't. So I'm in that weird gray area.
Yeah. So something else you should know, I should also mention this. There's a difference between corporate recruiters and third-party recruiters.
Okay.
Third-party recruiters are paid a fee, especially to find unicorn candidates. Okay.
Okay.
Meaning that oftentimes an employer will only work with a third-party recruiter if they can't find the person on their own. So they're really, really looking for somebody niche. And therefore, even if you have the MBA, you've got all these credits, again, if it's not the perfect match, they need to move on to somebody else. Now, that said, if you're talking to the employer directly, so a corporate recruiter, meaning someone who works there, or may not even be a recruiter, could be an HR person, it could even be the hiring manager directly. Sometimes they're going to be a little more flexible, because then they'll talk to you and they know, they're listening, like, oh, you've got an MBA. Wow. Maybe you could, and then they create something for you. Wow, maybe we could be flexible with this role. The third-party recruiter who's asked to do the niche search isn't going to know that. They've got marching orders, and they got to fill the marching orders. They're not in a position to be that creative and that flexible, whereas the internal person would be. And on
So
top of which, the corporate person,
sorry.
right? And on top of which, again, the third-party recruiter is being paid that hefty fee to find the unicorn. So that's it's going to, in other words, it's going to feel more rigid typically if you are being interviewed by a third-party recruiter than if you're being interviewed by a corporate recruiter, an HR person, or hiring manager.
So it seems like, based on what you said, a corporate recruiter may be beneficial, but it wouldn't hurt to go through a third party in general, just to get my name out there, because you never know.
Just to get your name out there, because you never know. That's right. And you know, and you don't know which employers are going to use a third party or not use a third party, right? It just, having your name out there with the healthcare recruiters can always be, because you just never know.
Yeah, there's a lot of healthcare jobs.
Yeah.
And to, I guess, tie it all up in my last question. So I am trying to make my star/smart stories. So as recruiters, I'm sure you hear people talk about their experiences and elaborate on these stories. What kind, I would imagine this also changes per job, but if I were to look at it generically, what kind of star stories would you be looking for? Like, what really gets your attention, like at the general scheme of things?
Well, what gets an employer's attention or recruiter's attention is a star story that directly relates to the job. Now, I'm saying that intentionally because you'd be like, well, of course, but most people don't think of it that way. When you're creating your star stories, you're thinking about your general accomplishments, right? But the only ones that the employer wants to hear are the ones that literally directly match what they have in the job. Most candidates think, oh, I'm just going to share a star story. But the star story may have nothing to do with the job, in which case it's brand confusion, in which case the employer is like, oh, well, wait, what? I don't get. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I was doing a search for an executive assistant, and the executive assistant was interviewing with the employer. Employer says, so tell me your greatest accomplishment. Okay. Candidate starts to tell the employer story about this amazing conference that she planned. Employer, great story, right? Star story. The employer walks out of there saying, I think she wants to be a meeting planner. It made her think that she wanted to be a meeting planner as opposed to an executive assistant, and she didn't get the job. Okay. The point is, it was a great story, but it wasn't relevant. So your job, when you're creating your star stories, have them, like, have your 10, right, ready to go, your arsenal, your arrows in your quiver. But then the only arrows you pull out are the ones that relate specifically to the bullets on that job description. So the best technique is look through that job posting, line by line, word for word, bullet by bullet, qualification by qualification, and say, do I have a star story for this? Do I have a star story for that? So that whatever questions they ask of you, you at least have the right arrows at the ready. Does that make sense? It's super, super, super targeted.
I mean, at the beginning where you are now, Christian, just write as many star stories, whatever acronym you want to use, you write as many stories as you can about your accomplishments. So you have those. Hopefully some, maybe a lot, will match up with a particular, job, and then you're all set. But when it comes to a specific job, if you go through and say, wow, I've only got two of my, my stories that really match this, you got to go back and can I come up with another story? Did I miss something in my career? Did I do something as a volunteer or something that maybe you can then create a story specifically for that interview, for that job?
Okay, I have a question. Christian, are you looking for a clinical position, or you just want to work? You looking for a clinical position?
No, clerical.
Clerical?
Clerical.
Okay, have you looked at some of the healthcare associations? Like the American Nurses Association, NCQA, URACS, all of those are healthcare associations.
I have
Where-
looked at a few.
Some of them have job boards.
Yeah, they do. And they work in that clinical area, but on the administrative side.
So the struggle that I'm having with that, so I want to go into quality, patient safety, patient satisfaction, something like that. But the struggle with that is some employers prefer a nursing background. I am not a nurse. I'm just a certified nursing assistant, which is way below. But I know what they've done because I've worked with them. I don't know everything, obviously, but so that's where I'm kind of struggling. I'm actually working on a certification called the Certified Professional in Healthcare Quality, which should help. And they do have volunteer opportunities, what I'm looking into, but they never answer their phone or email. So yes, I have looked into and actually have a list. I talked to another lady this week that gave me a list of organizations that she thinks would benefit me a lot more, like compliance. She thinks I could look into that. So I can look into that. If you have other suggestions, I can look into those to see if they would be a good fit for me too. I'm totally up to different options.
Another group is APIC, the Association for Prevention, Infection Prevention, and it was APIC, I think .org. So their members are infection prevention nurses, and they are all about the safety and quality.
Most of those NCQA, URAC, American Nurses Association, the National Council of Behavioral something.
Well, that National Council of Behavioral Health is actually for mental health.
They all have quality business lines that you could get in there and get some solid experience in your area.
Okay, that's good to know. I got referred to AHIMA, AAPC, ACO. I haven't looked into them yet, but I'm definitely interested in looking at different ones.
JCO, they
that's true.
certify hospitals.
Leapfrog is a nonprofit, and they do quality quality assurance.
Oh, really? Okay.
AHIP, AHIP.
That's health insurance plans, I think.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Downtown. All these companies that I'm mentioning are in DC proper.
These would not necessarily be places you'd want to work. These are places that might have job boards, that might have opportunities for you.
Right. Yeah, Kaiser Permanente. Yeah, I used to work for Affordable Care Act and 1-800 Medicare, so I'm up for insurance too because I know a lot about it. So that's good to know. I've had Kaiser Permanente mentioned to me 3 times this week. I know
That
it's
means
great.
call them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that's helpful. I wrote all the acronyms down for me to look at. I'm also looking into the certification book that I'm working on. They have a list of all the state regulations, like they're like the Joint Commission, for instance, CMS. They have a list of different things. So I'm going to look into that. Luckily, I'm starting sooner, and I'm not actively looking for a job because it's a lot. There's so many avenues in healthcare, so it's really overwhelming.
But it's all about networking, right? So the more people you meet, you're doing the right thing, Kristen, right? Keep on looking for those networking opportunities.
I am. I'm overwhelming myself with it too. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Kristen, one thing that came to mind, and Cheryl was saying, with the recruiters, I've participated in job fairs. These were virtual ones, but the point being, when there's a healthcare recruiter, you can often, get into their line and have an opportunity to ask questions. Or if they're too busy, most of them I find will message you back and then even call you later so you can ask those type of questions. This is my background. This is what I'd like to get into. What are your thoughts, or or can you provide any suggestions?
Okay, that's helpful. What virtual job fair do you,
This
go to?
particular one I'm referring to, this was several months ago, but I found out about this job fair through the Virginia Employment Commission. They will list the ones that they're aware of. So it was one, I think this was one for county and government jobs. And there was two individuals that worked at Mary Washington Hospital. So I would.
Okay,
was able to
I live
ask
near
some
Mary
questions.
Wash.
Pardon me?
I live 30 minutes from Mary Washington.
Okay, and I was impressed by this manager. You know, he was like a six-figure guy, but he took the time to call me back later, and we, had a 15-minute call about what I would need to
Mhm.
obtain to apply for some of those roles that I was interested in. They weren't hiring from at the time, but it was kind of like an informal informational interview.
Mhm, that's what I'm looking
Speaking of
for.
job
That's
fairs,
helpful.
there's a couple coming up through JCA. I'm putting that right here. Now, it does say 50 plus, like age 50 plus, and you can be any age, right? But just so you know, when you go to this website, there are a couple coming up here. That's Northern Virginia one is April 21st, and Montgomery County is the 17th, but they are virtual, Kristen, so feel free to avail yourself of that.
Yeah, and it also, I have constraints where I have to work remote, so that I think makes it a little harder, but
Yeah.
I will prevail.
These days, I'm telling, there are so many employers that are going remote. Really, it's just.
I think it's more beneficial.
There's a lot of pros to it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I could interject, I recently attended the one that JCA participated in, and it was all remote. And the hiring managers were on there and HR people were on there at the same time. I found it very beneficial.
So you can.
Good to
avail
know.
yourself of that.
I'll write that down too.
Mhm. All right, other questions?
I I had a quick question. Maybe you answered it last week, but so how does one find an internal champion in a company that they want to work for, but they don't have any connections in it?
Okay, so are you suggesting that you've already been to LinkedIn and you've looked for mutual contacts?
Is that the technique?
That's
you
the
showed
technique,
last-
yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
So what you
Right.
do is, I'm just going to pull up LinkedIn real fast. So you go here to the search bar, okay, and you put in the name of the organization. American Red Cross is the one I always use for these trainings. That's just top of mind. So you type in the name of the organization, you go to their page. This is their LinkedIn page. You click on the number of employees. And then you can start to drill down, right? So let's say you're looking for a marketing job. It's a director of marketing position, right? And you think, oh, well, the person I'm going to report to is the vice president of marketing or chief marketing officer. So you can just play around with the search bar. In other words, once you're in this page, you can then put another title in. So let's say you put vice president of marketing. Oops. And you see who comes up. Here we go. So, oh, that didn't work the way it was supposed to. Haha. Sorry. Okay, I'm so sorry. I don't know why this didn't work properly. Let me try this again. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to be able to search right within it. LinkedIn, by the way, can be a little glitchy. All right, let me do this a different way. The other way you can do this is once you have your list here, you can go to the all filters button, which is right up here, upper right corner, and you can go down to the title bar right here. So I'm just going to put vice president. Okay. Show results. So vice president, consumer marketing, Red Cross, vice president, sales and hospital marketing, Red Cross. See, so these are people who work there. Now, mind you, this is Red Cross, there's a ton of people, right? It probably won't be the case in a smaller company. But the point is that you can search down, drill down for hopefully the name of the hiring manager. this is kind of the order of priority when you're looking for an internal champion. You want someone to introduce you to the hiring manager first and foremost. It could be the CEO. That would be another great one. An HR person or a recruiter. Those are kind of 4 people that you want to try to get in front of. So the hiring manager, the chief executive, HR person, recruiter. If any of those people are second levels to you, then you're going to have a mutually shared connection right here. And you can click on that person. Then you're going to have at least one shared connection. You'll have probably, you could have more. So let's say it's Michelle. So I would write to Michelle a private email. And the way I get that is if we're first level connected, then I would go to the contact info button and her email is right here. 99 times out of 100, you'll see the email there. Once in a while, the person's very private and they close off all of their contact information, but at least you should be able to see her there. And so I would write to Michelle. Hi, Michelle, hope all's well. I noticed on LinkedIn that you're connected to whatever the person's name is. You're connected to, I forget who it was, whatever, like Peter, right? I recently applied for a role at the American Red Cross where Peter works. Attaches my resume and cover letter. Would you consider forwarding my application to Peter to Michelle? To Peter for extra consideration. In other words, you're leveraging your relationship with Michelle to get to Peter. Tavi, does that make sense? So you're using that first level connection. Now, if it's a third level connection, there's not much you can do. So here's Jody, right? LinkedIn's not going to show me who my mutual connection is because I don't have one, because I'm not connected to Jody directly. Okay. So what'll happen is in LinkedIn, you've got your first level and your second level, and you always have a mutual connection in between. But LinkedIn's not going to show you who's connected between your second and your third. So in that case, you just, nothing much you can do about that, which is also a reason why you want to have as many first level contacts as possible. This is a general comment, because the more first levels you have, the more seconds you have, right? And the more seconds you have, meaning you have more mutual connections. But if you have a very small number of first levels, you're going to have a lot of people who are third levels, and frankly, people who are just out of your network completely. That's the power of LinkedIn, is the first level connections. Is that making sense? So let me give you another training that I did. So speaking of JCA, if you go to my website, purposefulhire.com, go to job seekers, and then Shira speaks to job seekers. You'll see a whole bunch of presentations. This one is called Using LinkedIn Like a Pro. Hello, welcome. Sorry. And this is for, it's a 2-hour presentation. You're not going to want me to play it now. It's 2 hours on LinkedIn. So here, using LinkedIn like, okay. And in fact, I do, in case you guys are interested, I should make mention of this. I give this presentation is it every month or every other month to JCA? JCA has this program called the Career Gateway. It's $75. It's a week-long training, and they bring in guest speakers. I mean, they have a main trainer. Her name is Dr. Elise Barnes. She does the whole training, but then she brings in guest speakers to talk about specific things. So I do the one on LinkedIn. So I'll, if you guys ever want to join me on that, just send me a note, and the next one that I do, I can get you in for free, just for that training. We've done that before. It's no problem for the live training. But if you are interested in just watching the 2-hour video past training, you're welcome to do that one. Okay, Tavi. So I was just giving you like a high level concept around how to find the networking, but that training goes a lot deeper. And it also teaches you about how to write a good profile and just all kinds of interesting things about LinkedIn. All right, Tamara.
Yeah, you had a really nice phrase, and I didn't capture all of it. When you send an email to your second contact and say, I noticed your LinkedIn was so-and-so, and I just applied, for a job in that area. Would you consider forwarding my information for extra? Did you use the word consideration again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
For extra consideration, yeah.
I just want to make sure I had that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I like the way you phrased that. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, can you repeat so for extra what?
Sure, for extra consideration. So the way you would phrase it is, Yeah, you'd say, you know, hi, so-and-so, I noticed on LinkedIn, you're connected to X person, right, at the company I'm interested in. So, okay, so I'll be specific. Hi, Fred. I noticed on LinkedIn that you are connected to Sarah Smith, who works for the American Red Cross. I recently applied to a director of marketing role there. Would you mind forwarding my attached resume and cover letter to her for extra consideration? That's all, it's for extra consideration. Because what you're basically saying is you want her to pull you out of the cohort, right? This huge cohort of resumes that she's received, and you want to just sort of flag it to her, because otherwise you're just one of 200 resumes that's in her inbox.
And that is within the organization, because I've found sometimes, you know, I've got a lot of people, including myself, and I go through my LinkedIn like a Rolodex occasionally. There was a job recently, and my dad was actually connected to the CEO of the company, and I thought, this is great. And you know, I mean, it's not going to take a lot. I'll just apply anyway. And he's like, I have no idea who this is. I don't remember. So you know, sometimes what I do is I get around that by message my friend or my contact and say, do you know so-and-so? 30% of the time, they do not either know them well or remember them.
Because a lot of us have people we just don't know well on LinkedIn. Because the thing is this, even if your contact doesn't know that person very well, you can say, look, I appreciate that. Would you mind still doing me a favor? Because at least it's some kind of connection.
Mm-hmm.
Would you mind just reaching out to that person, even though you don't have a good relationship with them at all, just to say, my colleague, my friend recently applied. Would you mind passing this along just for extra consideration? I mean, like, because they're not actually, that's the other thing too. The extra consideration phrase is good because you're not asking the person to recommend you. You're asking them just to give you extra consideration.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can always try.
The other thing, unfortunately, that can happen sometimes on LinkedIn. Again, there's lots of people that you're connected with that you don't really know. And then I also find that there are a number of people on LinkedIn who don't regularly check their email on LinkedIn. And so you can send something and it goes into this dark hole. In fact, before the meeting today, I had a colleague who connected me to somebody on LinkedIn, and he was following up because he was expecting to see something in the thread that Thomas and I had connected. And I said to him, I sent Thomas a LinkedIn connection a week ago. Haven't heard from him. So, I mean, that can happen. Hopefully it doesn't happen very often, but it can.
If I could interject, I've used LinkedIn to connect to people. I was on a call with somebody, didn't know them very well, saw that they were connected to the hiring manager, sent them a note. They said, sure, I'll contact them. It has resulted, it did result in an interview.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the impetus for it, but it certainly helps. And also, I believe by doing that, it shows the hiring manager that you're going the extra mile.
Yeah. Well, and another aspect of that is depending on the situation, as Shira said, in my time in HR, typically a recruiter would look through all of the resumes and then maybe send me the top 10 before we sent them to the hiring manager. Well, there may have been somebody in the other 40 or 50 resumes that the recruiter looked at that I never saw. And so the more that you can, like Shira said, the more you can have your resume show up before you do, any way you can do that, take advantage of it.
All about relationship building on any level you can.
Yeah.
You just got to get noticed. All right. Any other questions to round us out? All right, we can go ahead and wrap up a couple minutes early here. All right, so for those of you who would like to stay on for the short prayer call that I lead, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing everyone, Lord willing, next Friday. All right, have a blessed day, everyone.